Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a lovely lunch, good chats, and got to see the exhibition. We're going to the afternoon session now, so my job is to remind you to use Slido. I'm sure you've all been using it all morning, but make sure that you use it to put in some questions for our speaker, but also importantly at the end, to rate each session. It really helps us to improve the conferences that REBA put on for you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Steve from NatWest Cushon, who's going to carry on the conversation about workplace savings.
Yep. Although with my booming voice, I'm not sure I need, or you might regret it. Good afternoon, people. Welcome. And I can't think of anything better on a sunny day, on one of the hottest days of the year, to be in here rather than out there talking about pensions. So as reward, I will try and make it as interesting and as engaging as I can. So I'm Steve Watson from NatWest Cushon. As the name suggests, and the branding, we are part of NatWest Group. A short session, so I'm just going to give a very brief overview of who we are. So NatWest Cushon, we are a fintech workplace pensions and savings provider, and we're focused on the end consumer, the pension saver, your employees. And we're focused in a way that is about increasing engagement, and we do that through tech. We do that through the customer journey, and we do that through communications. And we focus on engagement because engaged members, and that's open to interpretation, but the hypothesis is engaged members make better decisions, including paying more into their pension, which improves outcomes. We have a stand. I think our stand is 20, Vicky? Yeah, 20. So please, after this session, visit our stand, which is manned by Poppy and James over there. So on to what what today's presentation is all about. Even if you're not a pensions expert, I've been in this industry 35, 40 years. I've never, ever seen so much change, ever. And I can't even keep up. It's my job, and I can't keep up with the detail. It's, in all the press, you've got scale, talk of scale, you've got the pension schemes bill, you've got targeted support, guided retirement, and sometimes you look at this and you think, so what is it all about? How do it all feel so disparate? And none of it feels pretty, together. How does it all join up? Well, it comes really as a starting point, in a nutshell, a question raised by government, and not only this government, but the previous government too. In a nutshell, the exam question is the pensions industry delivering what it should? And is it in a state to deliver what it should be doing? And so there was at least phase one of something called the Government Pension Investment Review that sort of examined that question. But I think the question is more fundamental and more basic than that, because when you look at, and again, aging myself, nearly 40 years in this industry, a pension is still a pension. Fundamentally, it's never changed. So I think it's rather, the question should be, are pensions as they currently are still fit for purpose? We know that they do a good job for some people, but do they do a good job for everyone else? Now, to answer that question, or when you set a question, you should give an answer, and I will, but this session is really supposed to be thought-provoking. So I do use throughout the slides, I pepper a lot of stats. And these stats come from, we're a research-led organisation too, so these stats come from a lot of thought leadership papers, white papers, blogs, articles. So what we've done is, instead of putting a whole load of stuff on seats, we've got a resource hub, And at the end, the very last slide, when I take questions, there'll be a QR code. Please just aim your camera at that and you'll have access to all that stuff. So why is this question asked in the first place, and why are we where we are at the moment? So first I want to say that in raising that basic question, or actually even the higher level question, industry level question, the government, a lot of government agencies, and even the industry have been looking thousands and thousands of miles from here for inspiration. And they found it in Australia. And they looked and they said, do you know what? If we had a blank piece of paper, if you're looking for what good should be, then look no further than Australia. And you say, right, okay, and that's, you know, they call it supers. And there's lots of details, and it's not all positive, but it is a good system. But they don't have the history that we have. They don't have the legacy that we have. But the one thing, I mentioned engagement earlier, the one thing that they do have is very high awareness levels amongst all employees around their pensions and high engagement. And I thought this was an urban myth. But I've tested it and tested it and tested it, and it's not, okay? And the urban myth is, when people say, why Australia, and what are the indications? And they say, well, everybody talks about their pension. Everybody knows where their pension is, everybody's interested. And if you go to a barbecue or a dinner party or a drinks party, you talk about your pension. Really? So I was a bit sceptic. Okay. But I have tested it, and it's come from many, many horses' mouths that, yes, people do this. And it's not because they're sad, because I do. I love talking about that. Nobody else wants to hear about it, except when you've got a captive audience like this. But I think if I went to a barbecue and started talking about pensions, I wouldn't get a good reception. Anyway, so I do believe, and it's because they have choice. I think it is because it's simpler. I think there's a closer tie-up with the state. So there are reasons for this, but nonetheless, they are extremely engaged. Well, our pension system doesn't want engagement, not since 2012. So we want engagement at the moment, which is a bit of a convince myself of something else, but I'll sort of correct that in a bit. We have something called auto-enrolment. Auto-enrolment is about what it says on the tin. You join a company and you get put into a pension, and you mustn't, legally, I as a pension provider mustn't do anything to interrupt that automatic enrolment. I can't have any joining process. I can't give you any decisions to make. You literally do nothing. And the most engaged people are the ones who don't want to be in it. And let me tell you, they are really engaged because it's not that easy to opt out, okay? So you think, gee, so the majority of people stay in there. So even if you want to come out, the majority who do want to come out don't come out because they can't be bothered. Inertia prevails. And that graph, I mean, it's something like another, since 2012, an additional 11 million, 12 million new savers. So it's done the job, okay? But it's not good all good news, because a lot of people are in the pension, but unless we do something, they're in for a bit of a nasty surprise when they get to retirement, because they ain't going to have a lot of money or as much as they need. And this is I spoke about the pension investment review. That was phase one. Phase two is coming. We're waiting for it. Quite frankly, people just aren't paying it up. And that's the next challenge. So prior to 2012, the challenge was getting people in. The next challenge is making sure that they get a decent pension pot when they get to retirement. Now, the thing is, since 2012, we started seeing signs of it before then, but since 2012, the world has changed, okay? The world has totally changed. Culturally, in terms of what people are expecting, new generations are coming through and they expect different things, okay? But the fundamental pension product hasn't changed. Actually, I would argue it hasn't changed. If you if you park final salary, defined benefit, which are rarer than hen's teeth these days, unless you're lucky to work in the public sector, if you park that, nothing has changed. It's still fundamentally the same product. But the concept of retirement is not the same as it was 10 years. Before, going back even prior to 10 years ago, retirement felt like a cliff edge. You reached a certain age, you got your clock. God, I am showing my age now. You got your clock, you got your gold watch, and it was like, and pensions were a golden handcuff to keep people employed, okay, because of, there was shortage of skills and you had to hold on to skills. And two, if somebody had done 30 years service with you, you couldn't show them out the door with nothing, okay? So there had to be a pension. So those were sort of the reward elements of pension. So retirement is dying, and I could go on with different changes. But the two that I think have had the most impact that I want to focus on are competing financial challenges and increased job mobility. So increased job mobility. The genie's out the bottle and it's never going back in. That concept of a job for life, which was when I started, and your parents say, don't go for that job. I know it's more money, but go for that because you'll have it for life. Okay, that was the mentality. That has totally died. And job mobility is, the job tenure is shorter and shorter and shorter, okay? Where we did research, and it shows across the whole demographic that at that stage when we did, at that date when we did the research, the average person had already had 5 jobs. Now, you project that forward, and when current under 35s get to retirement, they would have had 11, 12, 13, 14 jobs by that stage. Okay, so it is a cultural shift. It is something that is unlikely to change. Now, the thing with that is, that's fine. If that's the way the work and the workforce adapts, and we as workplace givers, we adapt. But there are unintended consequences, and one of those unintended consequences is, again, it's really a matter for auto-enrolment. When I leave each of those jobs, that stops. That pension stops. I join my new employer, that pension starts. Then it go on and go on and go on and go on, till eventually, if the projection in terms of job mobility continues, someone at any particular point in time could have 11, 12, 13 pots. Now, again, that is not necessarily an issue if it's what you want, but research and stats show that's not what people want. It's by accident. So what happens is their tenure is getting shorter, the pot that they have with any particular employer gets smaller, and then we have what's called fragmentation. And fragmentation is the enemy of engagement. And the reason it's the enemy of engagement is there's something in financial psychology around value, and it's when does it matter? Okay, so it could be it does change depending on who you're talking to, but it could be £1,000, it could be £1,500. But as people move, and it's already happening, and there's something like close to £30 billion worth of lost pots, as it starts happening, as we move forward, people by their third job have already forgotten the pot from their first job. And so they lose touch and they forget that they've got it, okay? So by the time they come to you, which you might be the 10th employer, okay, they've forgotten maybe 2 or 3 of their pots, where they are, etc., because it's about value, okay? So when we talk about engagement with you as an employer, remembering this cultural shift, it's no longer, if you look at your workforce now, not many are going to actually retire with you, okay? That's fact, okay? So it's about then, okay, if that's not the driving force, it's one of the most expensive benefits that you provide. Where do you get your value from? So it's got to be that engagement. So if you want to increase engagement, the best thing, there's no silver bullet, but one of the best things that you can do is to help your employees bring in all their other pensions into your scheme. And you look and you think, yeah, but these pension pots, they've got nothing to do with me as the employer, but it's about that value. It's about how do you make it worth it? So if you want your scheme to be more meaningful, if you can make that a consolidator and you create, instead of 5 pots with £1,000 in each, 1 pot in your scheme with £5,000, you've got more attention. You've got the attention of that person more so than if you have 5 separate pots. So consolidation and helping people to transfer is something that can really reap values. But in terms of the competing financial challenges, which was the second point, is, and this is, as you get older, you get more engaged with pensions, and I think that's just logical, okay? But when you think about it, and under 35 seems to be the sort of cut-off, is you just have different financial challenges. So much so that you can't focus on pensions. You can't give it much of your attention. You don't want to engage with it. And the reason, and the best way I think of explaining that is adapting Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, okay, it's about self-actualization. So I can't think about my future self until my present day self is dealt with and, you know, I've got to grips with that. So if you think about that from a financial services perspective, it's about, you're asking me to engage with this thing that might be 30, 40 years away. It don't even make sense to me. It doesn't even feel like mine, because the psychological distance between now and then is just too big. I just can't. You need to shorten that distance somehow. Because at the moment, each of these segments is a milestone, and you can't get to the next milestone until you finish the other one. So I've got to get my basics done first. I need a roof over my head and I need food on the table. And then as I move up, those don't go away, but now my aspiration changes. So that might be renting, okay? It might be living at home. But as I move forward, now I want to get on the housing ladder, or I want to own my own home. So until I've done that, I'm still not thinking about, which is nearer to the top, I'm still not thinking about retirement. And when we did research on that, and it's all about payday. So if you, okay, so it's back to, you know, everything boils down to money, okay? So as you get sort of 40 onwards and you start getting wake-up packs, okay? Depends on which provider you are and whether that's engaging or not. But as you move forward, you're like, oh my God, payday's arriving. Okay, I can get my hands on my tax-free cash sum. And everybody knows that. They don't understand pensions. And we've done research on it, don't understand it, it's too complex. But everybody understands tax-free cash. Okay, and everybody's aware of it, and everybody knows what it is. Okay? But when you then look, and this starts to make sense then in terms of engaging, when you look at any research, under 35s, that is their to-do list in priority from the top. And pension is just right at the bottom. But that's not to say that they don't value pensions or that pensions aren't important. They are. Okay, and they recognise this in the research, but just don't ask me to do anything with it at the moment because I'm not. But if you were to do something else, if we had a blank piece of paper and you gave me access to my pension when I needed it, you let me use my pension as collateral to help me buy my first home, okay, any of that, now I'm interested, now this is where, and we've had sort of things proposals made, and I think they've just been in the too difficult box, which is during COVID, for instance, there was a big push. Should we allow people to access their pensions that much just so they could get over that financial challenge hump? And then there were other issues around people saying, OK, should we allow people to access some of their pension to at least help them with a deposit on their first home? But what they were talking about was really a model of, in the whole scheme of things, it can't just be about pension, okay? Pensions can't be spoken about in isolation, okay? They exclude a whole big group of employees, okay? What you need is something that really is going to speak to all of my financial challenges, no matter where I am in my life journey, okay? And there was this concept called the lifetime ISA, and Michael Johnson was the architect. And he was on our board, he no longer is, but he showed me the original proposal. Well, it's nothing like it is now, okay? It was more akin to this, but it got so watered down that eventually it just became a replacement of the Help to Buy ISA, but less clearer and more confusing, okay? Which often these things are. We think the lifetime ISA is good, and controversially, there was a call for evidence, and we responded to be controversial, but actually meaning it, because you have with the lifetime ISA a 25% bonus, and so for some people that's worth at least the same or more than tax relief on pensions. That maybe with a few changes, a few tweaks, the lifetime ISA could even be, dare I say, it's really controversial, an auto-enrolment vehicle that could see people through that journey. And this is really complex, and I spoke about simplicity, but this is really where I think it's about. It's about financial education. It's about getting people engaged with their financial challenges, with their financial journey. That is about education. It's about engagement before or when and as people need certain products. A singular approach as yet doesn't exist. A product that can see you through cradle to grave doesn't exist. But all the constituent parts do. And a bit like a flexible benefits programme, what you could have is, instead of a workplace pension, you could have workplace savings. And underneath that, you have something like this that speaks to every single financial challenge that an employee might have, whether that's emergency savings, and I know Nesta here, and they did a session before, and I've worked with Nest Insights before on the sidecar, and we did a similar case study, and that's important, to say emergency savings, getting on the housing ladder, later life, because that's the other thing that we need to stop talking about retirement. That has certain connotations, and they're not great. And it's also, retirement isn't any longer a cliff edge. And people, I was looking at stats yesterday, actually, just recalled it, that most withdrawals at the moment of tax-free cash are for people who are still in work. So it ain't to replace income. It might be to supplement, but I don't know, we're moving to a place where it's not necessarily about replacing, and people don't see it as that. The attitudes are changing. Oh my God, and I made it in time. And that's the famous QR code.
Lovely.
Do you want me to say on?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, there's at least one question in the Slido, if you're willing to take it.
Yeah.
So the question is, will the pension dashboard fix some of the problems with lost pension pots and help with consolidation?
Right. So I think it will help, but I don't think it's a silver bullet. And let me tell you why, okay? The pension dashboard is a look-see facility only, okay? So it's a bit like it's not even as good as adding stuff to your bank account, open finance. It's a look-see. So the problem with a look-see is I get it. And don't forget, pensions inertia prevails. So if I've got to look-see, even if I think, wow, I need to put all these together, unless there's an easy route, a button, that's what it's got to be, this button that you say, right, there, do it all for me, it ain't going to happen. So it's going to do a good job in terms of raising awareness, but I don't think it's going to do a good job in terms of consolidation at all. For consolidation, you've got to have the commercial dashboards. So you've got the dashboard singular with no S, and that's the maps. Then shortly after that, they're going to allow people like us, providers and banks, to do dashboards with an S, plural. And there we can then have, as regulated firms, we can have pathways and product solutions that enable people then not just to look-see, but then to also consolidate.
Great, thank you.